Hi everyone, glad to see you back on the channel. Today we're breaking down a major political showdown in Washington that's rapidly becoming one of the biggest stories in American politics right now. The fight centers on whether Congress will fund the Department of Homeland Security, or DHS, and how recent events, especially in Minnesota, have dramatically escalated tensions. This isn't just another budget argument. It's about public anger, political strategy, and how lawmakers respond when federal actions spark outrage in local communities. Just in the last few weeks, a series of federal immigration enforcement operations in Minneapolis have drawn intense scrutiny and widespread backlash. Most notably, the killing of Alex Preddy, a Minnesota resident, by federal immigration agents has become a flashpoint. Preddy was shot and killed during a federal operation in Minneapolis that involved Immigration and Customs Enforcement and other DHS agencies. A Department of Homeland Security report confirmed that 2 federal agents fired their weapons during the encounter that resulted in Preddy's death. The circumstances of the shooting have been deeply contested, and video circulating online has raised questions about what really happened. Local officials and activists have challenged the federal narrative, saying that they saw video footage suggesting Preddy did not pose an immediate threat. Minnesota's governor and other state officials have criticized DHS for not allowing state investigators access to evidence and for what they describe as a lack of cooperation in the investigation. This is not the first controversial death during federal immigration operations in Minnesota. Earlier in the month, a woman named Renee Good was also fatally shot by an ICE agent, and that incident already sparked public protests and legal action. That sequence of events, 2 controversial shootings in a short period, along with other aggressive enforcement efforts, has heightened public anger and raised broader questions about the conduct of DHS and ICE. In response, lawmakers in Washington, particularly Senate Democrats, have taken a firm stance. They will not support Department of Homeland Security funding unless serious reforms are made to immigration enforcement. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer has been at the forefront of this effort, saying that Democrats will block a spending package that includes DHS funding in its current form. Schumer and other Democrats argue that the current DHS funding bill doesn't contain enough safeguards or reforms to address what they see as patterns of violent and unaccountable actions by federal agents. The debate is now at the heart of negotiations over federal spending, and it's having real consequences. Funding for the DHS is part of a broader set of 6 annual appropriations bills that Congress must pass to keep a large portion of the government open. If Congress fails to approve those bills by the deadline 11:59 p.m. on Friday, a partial government shutdown could begin. This means that essential services could continue, but many federal agencies and programs might be forced to stop operations, furlough employees, or delay services. The Democrats' position is clear. They want to strip the DHS portion out of the larger funding package unless reforms are made. Those proposed reforms include greater accountability for immigration agents, requirements for warrants in certain operations, and stronger oversight measures. Some Democrats have even suggested splitting the DHS bill off entirely to allow other spending bills to move forward separately. However, that proposal has not been accepted by Republican leaders in Congress, who argue that DHS funding is a priority and should not be separated. Republicans, including members of the Trump administration, have defended the actions of DHS and federal agents and have generally opposed efforts to withhold funding. President Donald Trump has publicly stood by DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, even as calls for her resignation have grown amid the controversy. The White House argues that federal immigration officers were acting within their authority and that drastic policy changes are not warranted. In Congress, the situation has led to exceptionally sharp political division. Some Republican lawmakers have called for thorough investigations into the shootings, but have stopped short of backing Democrats' strategy to block funding. Meanwhile, several Democrats are pushing back against the DHS bill even more forcefully than before, arguing that the agency's conduct has repeatedly endangered civilian lives. One prominent Democratic voice, Senator Patty Murray, has publicly said she will not support the DHS bill as it currently stands. The debate isn't just about money. It's about how federal law enforcement operates, how much oversight they should have, and how they can be held accountable when their actions result in death or harm. Advocates for reform argue that recent footage and eyewitness accounts from Minnesota show a pattern of troubling behavior that must be addressed. They point to video that appears to contradict official accounts, footage that shows bystanders and residents saying the situation was mishandled. Opponents of the Democrats' shutdown threat argue that this tactic could harm other areas of government that rely on DHS funding, including border security and disaster response. Federal funding for DHS covers a wide range of activities beyond immigration enforcement, including cybersecurity, disaster relief, and counterterrorism. If negotiations collapse and a shutdown begins, many Americans could feel the effects. Airport security could be disrupted, visa and passport processing could slow, and federal employees could face furloughs. The window for a deal is incredibly short, which means negotiators are under intense pressure to find common ground. So far, neither side appears ready to give significant ground. Democrats insist that without meaningful reforms tied to funding, they will not vote to fund DHS. Republicans argue that withholding funding is irresponsible and could jeopardize national security. The public reaction remains deeply divided as well. In Minnesota, protests have continued and community leaders have demanded greater transparency from federal authorities. State officials have gone so far as to launch their own investigations into the shootings, with Minnesota's governor calling for full access to evidence. Minnesota's actions reflect broader concerns about federal-state cooperation and how justice should be administered when controversial deaths occur. Legal battles are also taking shape, with federal judges ordering DHS to preserve evidence while lawsuits are pursued. That legal pressure complicates the federal government's handling of the situation and keeps the controversy in the spotlight. The stakes in Washington couldn't be higher. If Congress fails to reach agreement by the deadline, parts of the government will shut down, affecting millions of Americans. The political fallout could shape election year dynamics and influence how both parties approach immigration policy going forward. Some analysts say this moment could be a turning point in how federal immigration enforcement is governed and scrutinized. Others warn that a shutdown could have serious economic and social consequences, undermining trust in government. No matter what happens, this showdown over DHS funding shows how deeply divided the country remains on issues of immigration, public safety, and federal authority. We'll continue watching as this story develops, with the funding deadline fast approaching and negotiations ongoing. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more updates as events unfold in Washington and around the country. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel.